So Anthropic just released their newest AI model, which is known as Claude Mythos. And a lot of people are talking about this model because of the cybersecurity impact that it will have. So due to this concern, Anthropic only released this model under Project Glasswing, which basically allows access to this model from some of the biggest companies who are responsible for basically keeping up the internet. So some of these companies include Amazon Web Services, Apple, Google, Nvidia, Microsoft, the Linux Foundation. And you might ask why these specific companies? Well, for example, if you remember back to October of 2025, Amazon Web Services had an outage, which basically led to a disruption of many companies, and basically half the internet was down. And while this was due to a DNS issue, this is just an example of how if one of these major providers went down or got disrupted, then a lot of other people are going to be affected too. So to understand a little bit of what Claude Mythos is actually capable of, we can take a look at this graph here, which shows the Firefox JS shell exploitations between different models like Sonnet 4.6, Opus 4.6, and Mythos Preview. So we could see that Opus 4.6 turned vulnerabilities it had found in Mozilla Firefox 147 JavaScript engine into JavaScript exploits only 2 times out of several hundred attempts, whereas the experiment was reran with Claude Mythos Preview, and it developed working exploits 181 times. It also achieved register control on 29 more. We can see that it has a 72.4% success rate, whereas compared to the other models, we don't really see any success here. Now, to add on to some of the concerns associated with Claude Mythos, we can see that during testing, Mythos was able to identify and exploit zero-day vulnerabilities in every major operating system and every major web browser. Many of the vulnerabilities identified were 10 or 20 years old, with the oldest being a now patched 27-year-old bug in the OpenBSD operating system, which is an operating system known primarily for its security. Now, the exploits that it's able to construct are not just run-of-the-mill stack smashing exploits, but in one case, Mythos Preview wrote a web browser exploit that chained together multiple vulnerabilities, writing a complex JIT heap spray that escaped both renderer and OS sandboxes. It autonomously obtained local privilege escalation exploits on Linux and other operating systems by exploiting subtle race conditions. Additionally, it also autonomously wrote a remote code execution exploit on FreeBSD's NFS server that granted root access to unauthenticated users by splitting a 20-gadget ROP chain over multiple packets. So as we can see, Claude Mythos is obviously an extremely capable AI model, and if it were to just be released into the public, then threat actors would be able to cause a lot of issues. This would basically give anyone advanced penetration testing capabilities. Okay, so what is the short-term to medium-term impact of a model like Claude Mythos? Right now, we see that the model is only available to critical infrastructure maintainers like AWS, Microsoft, Google, the Linux Foundation. It's not publicly available, and Anthropic states that they have no plans to change that. So likely in the short term, we're going to see a huge increase in the amount of CVEs which are available. So security researchers with access to this tool are going to be using it to identify zero-day vulnerabilities and most likely properly disclose of them to the software vendors. So more CVEs and patches are going to be released to the public, and it's going to be up to the end user to actually implement those patches. So what will it look like in the medium to long term? So in the medium to long term, it's discussed in an article by Wiz that it's only a matter of time before models with capabilities similar to those of Mythos become available to the public. So they estimate that it will take roughly 12 to 18 months before these capabilities reach open source models that anyone can run locally without restrictions. And from that point onwards, we should assume that malicious actors will be able to use AI models to discover and weaponize zero-day vulnerabilities at scale. So from this, we can understand that at some point, a model with these capabilities is going to be released, whether it's by Anthropic or by another competitor. We are essentially in an AI arms race at this point, where everybody is going to be racing to have the most capable AI model. But at some point, the public is going to have access to a model like this. So once models like this are available to the public, it's going to be really important for cybersecurity defenders to implement this kind of technology into their own workflows. So by doing this, they can identify and mitigate vulnerabilities as fast as possible. It also has to be understood that adversaries and attackers are going to be using the same or similar technology. So in order to protect against this AI-driven threat, it's going to be important to use something that has equal or greater capability. Also, since models like this are going to allow just about anybody without without any practical skills the ability to conduct penetration testing, the volume at which these attacks are going to occur is going to increase significantly. So in order for cyber defenders to defend against this increased volume of AI-driven attacks, they're going to need to implement AI systems of their own to keep up with that. So that was an overview with Project Glasswing and Claude Mythos. And in my opinion, this model is pretty scary. It's going to be interesting to see what happens when this model is actually released to the public. And I feel like overall, we're going to see a huge increase in the amount of hacks, amount of vulnerabilities, exploits that come out, because this product is going to be used at scale, and it's going to be used by malicious actors to autonomously and passively scan environments for any compromises which they can use. I mean, with this model, threat actors can essentially tell it to, go look for vulnerabilities or go scan this environment, and they can go to bed and wake up with working exploits. So this whole thing is definitely very interesting, and I'm curious but also worried to see what is going to happen in the future when this is actually released.